You know, despite all the talk about how terribly uncreative and repetitive the gaming industry has gotten over the years, I don't think there's been a better time to enjoy this hobby. If you're willing to look outside the biggest and hottest titles out there, you're bound to find something that can fit anybody's interests. Hunt Showdown is one of those games. It's grown quite a bit on me recently, and as someone who enjoys shooters of any kind, this one's its own breed of special. What do I mean by this? Let's take a look. Hunt Showdown is a 2019 first-person shooter that combines PvE and PvP elements with a hardcore approach to game mechanics, all packaged into a very specific setting of the Louisiana Bayou in the late 19th century. I mean, it even has a very detailed lore, but hey, I'm not playing the game for it, so whatever. Some people swear by its writing quality though. Before I continue any further, I have to make some disclaimers. Firstly, everything I'm about to say comes from someone with roughly 100 hours spent in the game in the past few months, so not only I'm not a veteran, but most importantly, I'm not really in position to comment on how the game evolved since its launch. Second, I'm not really the best player out there. Sometimes my boomer brain pushes me into making some really dumb decisions. I'm not that young anymore, have some pity. Last but not least, and this is mainly for those that will watch this video several months or even years down the line, things are subject to change, as is the case with multiplayer titles with active support and updates. So I will try to avoid talking in detail about very specific things such as damage made by some guns or the sort. But you'll see that this doesn't matter that much, so you'll see when I get to it. So with these out of the way, why did I get addicted to Hunt Showdown recently? In the bluntest way I can say it, it's because of the core game design. Crytek's known for the original Far Cry and Crysis series, which are balls-to-the-wall shooters, but Hunt is far from that. This is not a game where you run and gun, because most often than not it results with a bullet in the back of your head. Instead, patience is the utmost greatest skill you can have in the Bayou, and this is reflected in most of what you do during a match. You can run, but not for long, before you get tired and need to rest. You can jump and vault over obstacles, but it's not super quick and leaves you vulnerable. All but a few guns are single action or even single bullet, so you need to pick your shots and be accurate because of how much time your opponent has before you can press the trigger once again. Reloading takes a sweet ass time with most guns, so you better not make the mistake of reloading after each shot you take in the middle of a fight. The most obvious thing that favors this patient approach is the sound design. If a friend ever told you that Hunt is that game where the sound is super important, I can assure you that he wasn't just bragging about his new headphones. Everything you do in this game makes a sound. Yes, even switching weapons or equipment. Every gunshot can be heard across the map, so you're going to learn fast that you only do it as the last resort. Running is useful for moving around the map and making yourself harder to hit, but you can be heard from far away, which is a big problem if you approach a compound. Setting off a sound trap basically lets everyone know your location in a large area. During gunfights, being aware of the position of your enemies can save your life, and sound is most often 90% of the source of information you can rely upon. Ironically, this means that using the "he's got better headphones man" excuse whenever you get dunked on by some dude actually has a grain of truth. But of course, I can't talk about the sound design without touching the weapons of the game. I wouldn't be able to forgive myself after all. Since the setting takes place in 1895, the guns are all from the era and sound absolutely incredible. Everything about them is so crisp. Not only shooting them, but also equipping and reloading them are an absolute pleasure to hear if you're into gun porn. It actually makes me really question if I should put some music in the background like I usually do on this channel, or the actual gameplay audio, just so you can hear glimpses of the delight this game offers. All guns sound excellent. It's an absolute joy to unload a shotgun shot on someone and be rewarded with these very loud and thumping blasts. Not to mention that hitting headshots gives a very satisfactory splash, so it's very nice when you hit one from a very long distance. And speaking about the reloading sounds, their animations are also extremely well done and detailed. So as someone who likes firearms, I've had quite a few instances where I was under a spell while staring at how my hunter was loading his guns. Kind of a bad habit to have in a game where paying attention is so damn important. That's because, as you might have guessed already watching this footage, seeing things is not made easy in the slightest. You've got tons of foliage and objects littered throughout the game's two maps, all designed to make clear sightlines a rarity at best. What looks like a safe stroll through the forest could actually be an ambush ready to pounce on you and your team, and each bush can hide the gun that's pointed right at your head. You might think that being around walls and structures makes you safer, but nope. Each building and wall that you can hide behind has gaps everywhere, and I do mean everywhere, where people can just take a pop at you very easily if you're not careful. Add to that equation that most materials can be wallbanged, and you soon realize that your existence in the world of Hunt Showdown is extremely precarious. The game mode that represents the bread and butter of Hunt is Bounty Hunt. In it, roughly 12 players are dropped into a map in which you can do mostly anything actually. Sure, the intended objective is to use the clues in order to find the bounties, which are represented by a series of supernatural monsters that you need to kill and evacuate alive while the rest of the server is after you, but nothing stops you from trying to clean up the entire server like it's a regular deathmatch game, for example. Or you can play as a solo player, kill a boss as fast as possible and escape with the bounty while avoiding any other player, or you can kill one bounty and hunt the team that killed the other bounty in order to steal theirs as well. Even frowned upon playstyles such as camping inside bushes to snipe unsuspecting players away at the extraction are doable. Hell, you can get into a trio, get absolutely destroyed by another team and lose two of your teammates and escape with your life and gear, but your teammates will think that you're a massive dick for not trying to revive, just saying. The way the map and the game mode are made encourages the convergence of multiple teams in the same area. Sometimes more than one team goes for the same clue at the same time, or they arrive at the boss while someone else is fighting him. After killing the boss and collecting the bounty, the whole map knows your location, while you have 5 seconds of sort of wall hacks at your disposal to compensate. This makes for massive standoffs that are very enjoyable to fight out of in many instances, and to my heart's content, some of them are very long as well. I've had multiple instances where I was involved in encounters that lasted 15 minutes or more, both as the team that was defending the outpost or the one that was charging it. Coming out on top alive after something like this is one of the most enjoyable victories I've personally had in a first-person shooter, save for winning a PUBG game as a solo while gaming on a laptop that ran it at under 15 frames per second. Don't ask, those were tough times, alright? Winning a match lets you upgrade your hunter. There's a bunch of traits that serve as a very flexible way to approach the game in general, because save for a couple that are kinda weak or even bugged, most of them have viable applications. This is one of Hunt's strongest suits. The fact that players aren't pigeonholed into one certain build ensures a lot of gameplay variety that can bring you the win. You can play with a sniper and a pistol for the long range engagements, or with a shotgun and a rifle for some close to medium action. You can play with the pistol with fanning to shred anyone who thought it'd be a good idea to get close. You can add custom ammo to the mix, and the variety of strategies that you can pull off expands even further. The possibilities are not endless, but they surely cover so many niches that you're bound to find interesting ways to play time after time again. But in Hunt, nothing's supposed to last for a long time. You're not likely to survive a match, especially during your first hours, and that's okay. You lose your hunter and the equipment you spent money on, sure, but it's not a big problem. You might see these two currencies at the top of the screen and jump to the conclusion that this is some sort of freemium currency bullshit, but I'm here to ease your worries. The bounty dollars here are what you use to buy new hunters and their equipment, and frankly, only in the very beginning I was worried about how much I was left with after each match. I've kept saving money because it's in my nature to do so, but I never felt that I was putting myself at a disadvantage due to how weapons work in this game. I'll get to that in a little bit. The other currency is the so-called blood bonds. While these can indeed be bought for using real money, just don't, because you gain plenty just by playing the game normally, completing challenges or trials, and in the end, all you can buy with them are extra hunter slots and legendary skins for certain weapons and new hunters, none of which offers an advantage in gameplay. The same thing goes for DLCs you can buy on the Steam page. They only give access to skins and nothing else that might make you curb stomp poor plebs that can't afford them, so you shouldn't be worried about them. I mean, okay, some skins are a bit too good at blending in the scenery, but so are some of the random skins anyone has access to from the recruitment tab. You get the point. As an aid for players looking not to spend any money to enjoy the game is the Quickplay mode. In it you drop against 11 other players and try to collect as many of the clues so you get to become the wellspring first and then survive when the rest of the server tries to kill you. You win and you get to keep the hunter, the gear he collected, all the traits he's got and the experience from the match you just won, all for free. Seriously, there's no reason you're bound to have any problems with money, just do what the hell you want and take the wins and losses in stride. This is mostly in part because even the starting guns are good enough if you play well. Nothing stops you from buying $200 worth of equipment, killing someone who spent $2,000, steal all his neat guns and rinse and repeat. For all the talk about the game being an exercise in patience, the time to kill is extremely low if you hit your shots well. 2 shots in the chest with a rifle at medium range is generally a dead player, the same for pistols at close range. In close fights, mostly anything is an instant kill with a headshot. Bullets are also using a semi-realistic ballistics system in the sense that bullets take time to travel but fly in a completely straight line instead of a curve, so leading shots is easier but still not super easy to pull off without experience, considering that bullets have different travel speeds between each other. All this creates a very high incentive to master positioning and your game sense, and is the main reason I consider Hunt to be a hardcore shooter in the vein of Insurgency, for instance. When it comes to progression, Hunt uses a system akin to Battlefield or Call of Duty, on top with the prestige mechanic for those who want to jump on the treadmill all over again in exchange for a little bonus for doing so. I don't mind it in particular since it's entirely optional. In theory. Well, here's my first criticism for the game. Well, that took a while. Recently, like a couple of months ago, Crytek added a skill-based matchmaking system to the bounty hunt mode. It's been through a couple of tweaks already, and there's a big possibility that the complaint I'm about to drop here is going to be addressed rather soon. Overall, the system works. It still goes through some tweaks here and there because it's still new, and I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. But I find it strange that while you're facing players with many more hours played judging by the prestige levels of some, you can only be paired up with players from the same prestige level as yours when you use random partners. This means that if you don't want to ever prestige, you're forever bound to only get teammates with prestige 0, which includes a lot of new and inexperienced players. As I said, I'm not a veteran and I'm not trying to be elitist, but some of the new players really struggle, I'm sorry to say. Never mind, actually I'm not sorry, because some of the things I did in the first few hours were absolutely shameful, and I'm damn glad I didn't even think of recording them. Even if some old-timers are allegedly around the same skill level as me, their added experience gives them a huge advantage on average. Therefore, you're basically forced into prestiging if you want to be teamed up alongside other experienced players, so the option is not so optional as before. The learning curve for new players is steep, and despite some efforts made by Crytek in the past year or so to address this, unfortunately it isn't enough to help the situation. The included training mode is okay for the basics, the trials are okay-ish, but in the end quite a few mechanics are not made very obvious. For instance, it took me quite a long time to realize that in Quickplay, discovering a clue gives a hunter a permanent trait. You're not told about any of the special items you can pick up in the world, which range from money, Hunter XP, weapon upgrades or special traits that you can fish out by killing these meathead mobs that roam the levels. You don't know that when you're cooking a stick of dynamite, the cursor starts to move closer to you when you're in the last moments you can throw before it explodes in your face. In the light of this, I have a few recommendations for new players. First, use the spectator mode when you die so you can watch other people play. It may be more fun to play yourself, but believe me, there are so many little quirks and tricks that become very obvious after watching a veteran play that it's very worth it to spend the 10 or 15 minutes before heading back to the main menu. And speaking of spectating, here's another 2 complaints I have to make. First, why is the damage history only showing the damage done to me? I would have liked to know all the damage that I done to the respective opponent before he downed me, maybe even with the locations of each hit. The second complaint is that there is no replay feature. Crytek promised a 2D replay system to come out soon, but having something like other shooters do would be really useful in all sorts of ways. New players can take a look and learn more new things, content creators can make better videos and help promote the game better, and so on. Hell, sometimes I am curious as to why I saw nobody on the servers and would really enjoy seeing what the hell happened. I suppose this is more about server resources than anything, but it's still a shame nonetheless. On the same sentiment, the game would really benefit from an honest-to-god shooting range where you can test out all the weapons on a locally hosted environment. I mean, I don't mind testing the weapons on the field, but not everyone can handle the pressure of testing a $100 rifle or a $1,000 rifle for that matter in a game and risk dying because he doesn't know how to use it yet. At least Quickplay gives you a risk-free opportunity to check out multiple weapons and so do some of the trials, so I'm not that upset about this. Now back at recommendations, another thing I can suggest for beginners is to watch some hunt YouTubers from time to time and discover new things from them. I personally watch Psycho Ghost Gaming, who made some very exhaustive tips and tricks guides on his channel, Delacroix Gaming, who also did some guides for some weapons and game mechanics, and Rachta Z, or how, I don't know his Czech, I don't know how to pronounce those names, who shows how far away one can get by mastering the game's mechanics in his highlights. Now YouTube is flooding my feed with a bunch of Hunt Showdown content from a bunch of channels, so I guess the algorithm works as intended? Coming from someone who really enjoys his time in Hunt, there's something I can't in good conscience leave out for people who are wondering whether or not to buy this game. The learning curve is not only steep, it's also very long. Experience counts enormously, as I mentioned before, and because of that, people with hundreds of hours or even thousands of hours have a considerable advantage over newer players, and you have to live with it while learning your trade. With time, you'll start distinguishing between the sounds of each weapon and change the way you approach fights accordingly. You will start counting the number of dead players across the map, judging by the numbers of big gunfights you hear in the distance, just so you can make a judgment regarding on how many people are left on the server. You'll start learning how visible you are in each spot inside the compound, regardless if it's outside or inside, but you'll also know more and more locations that you can take a peek outside. You'll start avoiding sound traps and make the most of those that were triggered by other teams. And these are all things that I picked up over 100 hours of play. Don't get me started on the ridiculous wallbang kills you can perform once you know the layout of each building inside and out and master the game's sound positioning. I am so far away from pulling those off. I personally got the game at a discounted price of $20 and I feel as it's a steal for the time and quality gameplay it provided me. But the regular price of $40, would I recommend it? I would, but with a big disclaimer. Hunt Showdown is a niche game and not for everyone. The likes of Insurgency and Escape from Tarkov are similar to this, if this helps people make a decision. The game doesn't have a very large player base traditionally. In fact, it's got the highest average player count ever since its release, and the wait times are relatively decent even if sometimes you get emptier servers than usual. This certainly isn't the kind of game you can expect lots of players to find if you boot up at 4 AM during the week, that's for sure, but considering that the third map is bound to be released in the following months, it's to be expected that more people would jump in. Yeah, you heard it right, it's only third map. This is one of the things that you need to get used to. Development team that still works on Hunt isn't that large, so don't expect frequent updates. I don't personally mind it, especially when looking at how much care they took with each major feature they introduced post-release, but you have been warned. Before ending this video, I want to commend Crytek for what they did, especially given the situation. That's because the game had the troubled development to say the least. It started in 2013 as a project by the former Vigil Studio employees that were hired into Crytek's short-lived Austin subsidiary before it was closed down, and work was continued by Crytek. The initial game they announced looked completely different, it was even in third-person perspective. So, after 5 more years of work, the end result is what you have seen throughout the whole video. And just to make a comparison, go look at what the game made by the former developers, Remnant from the Ashes, looks like, and just see how much of a difference between the two there is. Honestly, considering that the usual conclusion of such clusterfucks is cancelled games or garbage releases, the way Hunt ended up as is quite an impressive feat in of itself. So there you have it, this is the game that got me cooked currently. I have to admit, it's fun covering a multiplayer game for a change of pace. It's quite different to the usual single player affair that's usually done on this channel. With this being said, thank you for watching this video. Click all the fancy buttons to like and subscribe so you won't miss out on my future content. And until next time, cheers!